Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Some of the most meaningful jewelry you own isn't new. It's inherited. A ring from a grandmother, a necklace full of memories, but no longer your style. Duke's Jewelers reimagines family heirlooms into custom pieces you'll actually wear and love. Working one-on-one, Duke's designers honor the original story while creating something fresh and modern. Don't let meaningful jewelry sit unused. Let it live on beautifully. Visit Duke's Jewelers in Springville or online at dukesjewelers.com, where old stories become new treasures.
Believe it or not, this guy actually has friends.
Nice.
This is Scotty G and Friends on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone, kicking off the third hour of the program. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hump day. Your week's almost over. You're on the downslide, at least. One of our favorite dudes on the planet is going to join us here in just a moment, Shehan Jeyarajah from CBS Sports, and a lot to break down with him. Look, Shehan has got you covered when it comes to the Big 12. Everything you need to know, Shehan is your guy. In fact, he joins us right now. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to catch up. Is this busy time, quiet time? What's life like for you right now?
Yeah, a little bit of an in-between, right? Because obviously there's not a lot of news coming out right this second, but you are getting camps. You are trying to figure out who the heck is on whose roster at this point. So I feel like you're mostly doing groundwork as opposed to putting out a lot of new content.
All right, so the NCAA, and you got to check everything today because you're never sure what's going down on April Fool's Day. But it does appear that there is some legislation passed to try to prohibit blind transfers. Is this A, true, or is it a April Fool's Day joke? And B, how much are lawyers looking to sink some billable hours into this one?
But to be clear, Utah State is having a Cal Field, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's going down for sure.
Great. Love to hear it. No, so this is a really interesting piece, right? Because as people know, they got rid of the second transfer window after the season. But last season, you saw numerous players ultimately, kind of headlined by Jake Retzlaff, the former BYU quarterback, just jump out of, unenroll from schools and enroll at new schools, kind of going around the portal completely. That's how they were able to get around sort of the portal windows. Well, the reality is there's no point of having transfer portal windows if you don't have sort of rules around that. And so the NCAA's tried to come out ahead, very strict punishments potentially on the horizon. What they've said is that potentially you'd be looking at 50% suspension for a head coach if they were to try to recruit a player who kind of tries to circumvent the transfer portal. But like you said, I mean, this is going to be something that's ultimately challenged. What will be the timeline of that challenge is kind of hard to say, but I do think that ultimately, the NCAA understands, like, if we don't have clear rules to try to enforce some of these new policies that we're putting into effect, they don't really exist in practice.
Yeah. And look, I applaud the NCAA. It may be a little slow, but this is one where it's like, okay, you know what? We do have these rules in place. We are letting you guys go to whatever school you want, but you got that 15 days to do it. You got your 15 days. I know you guys are sending all kinds of illegal DMs throughout the course of the year, and so those deals are pretty much put in place already before that 15-day window opens up, but at least you kind of have to honor those 2 weeks to make your move. And if things aren't going well for you in fall camp, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to deal with it. I mean, we got to draw a line somewhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I've said really since the beginning of NIL and transfer portal and all this stuff is that there isn't a sport where you have essentially unfettered permanent free agency, right? Where any player can jump at any time for any amount of money, where you don't have players locked in. And we're slowly starting to work our way towards some of this being the case, right? We saw with the Damon Williams situation at Washington, they were willing to potentially go after him for his buyout and for his contract, and that ultimately convinced him to stay put. Now, that of course didn't end up being the case with Duke quarterback Darian Mensah, who went to Miami anyway. So we're kind of trying to get a little bit closer to stability. Now, I think that sort of the agreement seems to be that it probably isn't going to happen permanently until we get either a law coming from Congress or until we get collective bargaining of some type. But in the moment, right, neither of those things is likely to happen in the next, let's say, 6 months. And so they're trying to find ways to work around that, trying to find ways to figure out what they can enforce, and frankly, kind of trying to feel around to see what are the boundaries that they're setting for themselves.
We're coming up in a midterm on November, so I don't know if anything really gets done, but do you feel like there is starting to be a little bit more of an appetite by Washington to help out in terms of this?
I think there is, right? I think there is. Like you said, there's a lot of serious stuff going on in the world right now, and that makes it a little more complicated than it might have been even 6 months ago. But, we did have this roundtable with President Trump, and roundtables, there's only so much that happens. But I think that more than anything else, this is showing that this has gotten the White House's attention. This has got Congress people's attention. We've had people on both sides of the aisle, frankly, who have been willing to kind of come up with different types of legislation and bring them in front of their colleagues, whether it be Senators Cory Booker and Richard Blumenthal on the left, or of course, Ted Cruz, Tommy Tuberville, and many others on the right. And so I do think that we are in a position where there is going to be more focus put on this issue heading forward. The question ultimately becomes, again, do we reach the point of having 60 senators in favor of a bill? Because the reality is, right, I mean, even if you have a number of senators on both sides who support some levels of legislation, we do see, especially when we start talking about the Democrats, they don't like the idea of, for example, getting rid of some levels of player agency, getting rid of the need for things like collective bargaining. It's more complicated than it seems in practice, but I do think that it has Washington's attention.
Nice. Shehan Jeyarajah, kind enough to join us here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. All right, so there's some institutions that will just lean into being the evil empire, if you will, or the villain. With their recent football and basketball hires, is there anybody more than LSU more equipped to take over that role?
Yeah, I know the cuddliest coach on campus right now might be Kim Mulkey.
I know, right?
No, it's a fascinating collection of people. And by the way, Jay Johnson, the baseball coach over there, is very well respected in the profession. But you talk about people who are willing to go big. I mean, these are people who are willing to go big. I think that institutionally it kind of started in some ways with their old athletic director, Scott Woodward, who is known as a big game fisherman. But I think that that's actually kind of empowered some of the other power brokers around campus to similarly want to go big. And, we've heard a lot that the governor over there really liked Lane Kiffin. He really wanted LSU to land Lane Kiffin. And same deal with, of course, Will Wade coming back as well. He's somebody who was very popular before he was ultimately let go for NCAA violations, some of which are no longer violations at this point. And look, I mean, when you look at Will Wade, he's a coach who's managed to win basically everywhere that he's been. He took North Carolina State back to the NCAA tournament in his first season after a disappointing year last year. And now he's going to head to LSU, where they're going to try to find even more unlimited resource to try to build him a winner. So, no, I mean, when you talk about the big villains right now of college athletics, I mean, I think the LSU has to be right at the top.
Oh, there's no doubt. And a good friend of mine is now kind of the associate AD, and he was the AD at McNeese State that gave Will Wade a chance to get out of Siberia and get back into coaching. And I'm a huge fan of Heath Schroyer, but he's a wheeler and dealer, man. And I texted him the other day. I'm like, how much fun is this to be a part of what's growing? He's like, I absolutely love it, man. So I think what LSU's got brewing right now, it's like, okay. And I don't know if anything signifies where college athletics is right now than what we've seen out of LSU.
No, for sure. And I think that, obviously I've done a lot of writing and reporting about Texas Tech and kind of their understanding that this is a once in a lifetime moment. Well, I think that LSU sort of feels that same way with this opportunity, right? Where there are a lot of programs, frankly, that threw a lot of money and threw a lot of resource in the first couple of years of NIL. I'm thinking of like a Tennessee, for example, who built themselves into a playoff team that way. Well, I think that there are some levels of people, kind of waning in that regard, right? Of donors having put 5-6 years into this and kind of being on the downswing. Well, LSU is on the upswing right now. They are very engaged. Obviously, you have a personality like Lane Kiffin who's able to come in and make a lot of cases to people. The governor, Jeff Landry, like I mentioned, is also a huge part, I think, of some of those conversations as well. And then you add Will Wade, who's a relentless fundraiser. You add Kim Mulkey, who is the type of coach, I covered her when I was at Baylor, right? She is somebody who is able to go in and really impose her will on a donor base in an athletic department. They are full steam ahead right at this moment. And I know that my colleague Chris Heimer has reported that just in this football roster alone, they potentially are looking at more than $40 million for the 2026 season. It's crazy stuff to look at right now.
Wow. And essentially, I think I was reading somewhere where they've got like $200 million in buyouts and, it essentially just dead money almost. I mean, it's just remarkable what's going on down there at LSU. If there's a team out there, a football team that based on coaching hires or retention or transfer portal acquisitions that bettered themselves immensely going into spring and fall camp, who would be some of your candidates there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I'm going to start with one that people in your state might not like to hear, and that's the University of Michigan. I really do like what Kyle Whittingham did over there, obviously bringing over a lot of big-time talent. And I mean, it's funny, right? From a coaching perspective, you're basically getting a Utah All-Star team with Jason Beck coming over as offensive coordinator, and of course, then bringing over that defensive coordinator, Jay Hill from BYU as well. So I think that that's a staff and a program that really has the potential to pop in year one. I think that this roster was already better than I think that people realize because of the way that they've spent the past couple of years. And having a coach like Kyle Whittingham come in, I think that's going to end up being a huge deal. Obviously Texas Tech was a team that popped last season, but I think that they might have actually taken in some ways a step forward this year, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The big question to me, even heading into last season, was their offensive line play. Well, they have a lot coming back, and they managed to once again reload on the defensive side of the ball. I think, and then of course you add, I'd be remiss not to mention Brendan Sorsby, one of the top quarterbacks coming in, and another Big 12 team as well that really made hay in the portal. Obviously, it was a lot of players following their coach, but Eric Morris at Oklahoma State managed to bring in the core of his North Texas team that won 11 games last year. And on top of that, by the way, augmented it with a lot of power conference level offensive and defensive linemen as well. That was sort of the piece where they weren't able to compete with South Florida back last season. Well, that's not going to be the case at Oklahoma State. They really feel like they've built enough. So, look, they won, I believe, 1 game last year. I'm not saying that they're going to win 12 this year, but expect them to be back in the 8-9 win range.
Is Sorsby a game changer, or was he just the beneficiary of being the best quarterback available? Because I don't know if I'm 100% sold on him.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Like, if you think that he's going to come in and be Fernando Mendoza, like, no,
Yeah.
he's not necessarily going to do that. But I think that there's a couple pieces of this, right? One is, and maybe even to make the comp to Mendoza, they feel like they're going to be able to run the ball at a very high level. They've got 4 offensive line starters returning, including both tackles. They've got 3 running backs who they think are NFL caliber players, especially with Quinton Joyner coming back, who they expected to be their running back 1 last year before he got hurt. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it, too, is that one, he's able to add, I think, a running element to this offense that I think that especially after Baron Morton got hurt, they missed. But second of all, they really do feel like he is a processor at a higher level than what they've had in recent years. That he's going to be able to go down the field, that he's going to be able to make quick decisions. And while Baron Morton had a lot of skills, that was something that he struggled with, especially when you look at some of those games where, the offense was a little inconsistent. The 2 BYU games, for example. Of course, that Oregon game where they really kind of felt like he lost his head just a little bit. So it's not necessarily that they feel like he's going to come in and win the Heisman next year, but they feel like he's just going to be able to be more of a mover and shaker for them offensively and allow their offense to not necessarily reach the level of their top 3 defense, but at least be more in that top 10 to 15 range.
So much pressure on Morgan Scalley this year as the head coach of the University of Utah. And we'll talk about that. That's obvious. I think the next highest pressure pack position here in the state of Utah, Morgan's one. I think Kelly Papinga taking over for Jay Hill as the defensive coordinator at BYU is right up there, because what BYU's been able to do defensively, making that transition into the Big 12 over the last 2 years, has just been remarkable. That's something that we're certainly keeping an eye on here for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great call, because, you look at when things change for BYU, it's when they did bring in Jay Hill, right? He was seen, if Kalani Sitake were to leave, right, he was seen by many as a coach who could be elevated to be head coach at BYU because of the success that he's had on defense. And, Kalani Sitake said after Coach Hill left, right, this is our BYU defense. We feel like we have a lot of guys here who understand what we want to do. And I do think there is truth to that. But Jay Hill is a very special play caller. He was somebody who was always able to put his players in the right spot. They've developed and identified at a really high level. And again, we'll kind of see what of that defensive special sauce was Jay Hill, what of it was BYU and Kalani Sitake. So I think that they've got great administration there. I think that they've got a great system there, but it's going to be a lot to ask for a coach, obviously stepping in as a first-time defensive play caller, who, by the way, is leading a team that expects to not only compete for the Big 12, but potentially win the Big 12 as well.
How difficult of a situation is Morgan Scalley? And not because Utah's got a lot of rebuilding to do, but just you never want to be the guy that takes over for the guy. And the bullseye that's on him and this staff after losing some key members of that staff and that roster to Michigan. I mean, this is and I love Morgan. I've known him for 20 years. He actually used to do sports radio for us right out of college. And they decided for some reason he wanted to go into coaching, which I don't know. I don't know if that was really the best move.
Him.
Yeah, I think he did okay. But it's just those are tough shoes to fill for him.
Yeah, I think that it's just really unfortunate, frankly, for Morgan, right? Because it seemed like he was set up in such a perfect way heading into his first season as a head coach. Obviously, great staff around him, lots of great players around him. He was able to take over a roster that seemed to be trending upwards. And while I still have a lot of faith in him, I think that he's going to be a really good coach at Utah. It's just the immediacy of it becomes a lot more difficult. And this was already going to be a different roster after losing essentially the entire offensive line that I think was really the catalyst behind powering this team. But I actually think more than anything else, losing Jason Beck is a really big deal for them because, when they brought in Devin Dampier last year, he came with Jason Beck. He was somebody who knew how to run that system at a very high level. Well, now, of course, they're bringing in a more of a passing offense, and they got two quarterbacks in Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin who are more runners at this point. Now, I think they're going to find a way to have a happy medium as well, but I mean that's a big deal, right? When defensive coaches come in with established systems on offense, it really helps them out a lot. When you have to start from scratch, and I mean, again, we'll obviously see what happens with this first offensive staff, but if they struggle out of the gates, all of a sudden you're out there trying to figure out what's the next iteration of this going to be. So I think his job is just a lot harder from that perspective. Now, again, I think that one thing that is helpful is this isn't the hardest schedule that they're ever going to have, right? This is a pretty moderate schedule other than that game against BYU. But I mean, again, they kind of hope that they could be a Big 12 contender in year one. And maybe that's still on the table, but it's going to be a lot to ask of them, I think.
When you nationally are looking at a situation like the Pac-12, do you and your colleagues look at that as just like, that's just Mountain West 2.0? Like when you see those schools and you see how that's set up, does that seem elevated in your eyes at all, as opposed to what originally was there in the Mountain West?
So it's interesting, right? I think that we have gone through so much with this idea of Power 4, Group of 5, right? And I think that we're going to have to adjust a little bit. And what I mean by that is there's a Big 2, right? There's the Big 10 and the SEC. Then there's a little bit of a gradient. And the Big 12 and the ACC are certainly above everybody else. But I think that, the idea of sort of all the group of fives being the same or even similar is probably not the case anymore. And I think that where this new Pac-12 kind of thrives is that I think they're going to be pretty competitive with the American. They're going to have a chance to be, 1A, 1B as the best non-power conference in college football. And I think that's not a small deal, right? If you can have a pathway to earning that bid to the college football playoff, maybe every other year, that's a really good place to be, I think, if you are the Mountain West, because, you add a number of teams that were already winning at a high level, led, of course, by Boise State, with a Washington State and Oregon State duo that I think is still very high quality, that I think probably is stuck sort of resource-wise somewhere in between the power conferences and the group of five conferences. Like, I think that does elevate what they've been. And certainly if you are one of those teams that's joining the new Pac-12, you're probably a little happy to be rid of, not to be disrespectful, right? But some of the weight, right?
Yeah,
some of the teams that you were sharing with that maybe you don't feel like we're trying to compete at the same level as you. So I certainly view it as a step up for most of these teams. I think that, again, in this world where you're working in more of a gradient than pure top and bottom, I think that it's a good place to be. And yeah, I mean, I think that there is a notable gap between the Pac-12 and the ACC and Big 12, but I think that there's less of one than when they were in the Mountain West.
So I want to, I want to be careful because I don't want to get in trouble with your CBS bosses here, but I do like the NCAA tournament, and I've seen the numbers being pushed by the NCAA and CBS that these are all-time high ratings for the NCAA tournament. And I know football is your bread and butter, but do you feel like there is an appetite to where basketball can be at least somewhat, and I'm talking not the tournament, I'm talking about regular season, college hoops can be somewhat of a draw, because the Big 12 seems like they're going heavy in on basketball. This new Pac-12 conference, let's be honest, it's a good football conference, but it's a great basketball conference. So when you look at that, do you feel like that appetite is growing a little bit where TV networks can say, okay, you know what, we can showcase this and we can make money on this?
Yeah, I think that what I'd say, right, is that football's going to be the driver. I mean, I think that that's understood, right? But I think that there's more marginal value to be drawn than has been drawn in years past. And you mentioned, of course, the basketball side of things. I'd also point to the women's basketball side of things. Talking to people, like you mentioned, at the Big 12, they feel like women's basketball has been one of the most undervalued assets that college athletics has. There's great appetite even when you start getting into the volleyball, when you start getting into the softball, and I do think that men's basketball, again, it's really big right now. I mean, you look at the peak of that UConn Duke game, right? I mean, we're pushing 20 million people. That's a big deal for an individual game on that top end. So I do think that it does matter. I do think that it is a driver. Of course, it's going to be secondary to football, but especially, like, again, I go back to what we talked about with like the American versus the Pac-12. They're going to be two conferences that are competitive with each other. Well, the Pac-12 being a great basketball league, that is something that can provide value, that can potentially help with some of these negotiations, that can help drive brand value. And, I always have this conversation, right? When we talk about money going to different conferences, that's a part of it, but the other part of it is relevance. You want to be considered a major conference from a monetary perspective because you're treated differently by fans, because you're treated differently by investors, by sponsors. And I think that that's one place where this new Pac-12 has the opportunity to jump up is, yes, you come in, by the way, with the Pac-12 branding, which means something to people, but also I think that if you're able to establish a level of relevance in basketball where potentially you're competing to be a multi-bid league year in and year out, that's, I think, where you're really able to make some hay.
So now we're living in this digital world where, again, you can check out the show at KSLSports.com on our YouTube page as well. And so there's always a lot of judgment going on to the background of guests in there. And this started during, COVID when everybody was on Zoom. I think, you mentioned the Battle Cattle field for Utah State. I could probably arrange for you to get a Battle Cattle helmet with that Holstein look and put that in that top shelf right next to that globe there. I think that would be a good look right there.
I would absolutely take it. You know me. Actually, it was the University of Idaho sent me
Yes.
a little replica of the Kibbe Dome. I've got it back there. So listen, if you can get it to me, I'll put it up.
All right. Done and done. I'm on it. Hey, Sheyhan, you're the best, man. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
He is Shehan Jeyarajah, CBS Sports, right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. All right. We'll set the scene, reset the show. Coming up next, this is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Protein is now at Starbucks, and it's never tasted so good. You can add protein cold foam to your favorite drink or try one of our new protein lattes or matcha. Try it today at Starbucks.
I sold my car in Carvana last night.
Well, that's cool.
No, you don't understand. It went perfectly. Real offer, down to the penny. They're picking it up tomorrow. Nothing went wrong.
So, what's the problem?
That is the problem. Nothing in my life goes as smoothly. I'm waiting for the catch.
Maybe there's no catch.
That's exactly what a catch would want me to think.
Wow, you need to relax.
I need to knock on wood. Do we have wood? Is this table wood?
I think it's laminate.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's close enough.
Car selling without a catch. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Breaking down the teams you're passionate about. This is Scotty G and Friends on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
See, now we're cooking, Lloyd. A little guster coming out of the break.
Asking you shall receive.
We got to get more guster in the old library there.
Hey, anytime you're feeling like I said, I think we can bring some
Yacht rock.
Yacht rock. Yeah, like if you're feeling something, give it to me.
I'm going to send you a link to this band I've been listening to lately. And the fact is, when you look at Spotify and you're like, how many people are actually listening? And it's like you and maybe two other people. It's like, yeesh.
I think I need to make it a point to bring it back a little bit more 80s too.
Yeah,
I love 80s.
That would be good.
I do it, and I feel like that's some of our demo right there.
Yeah,
that's some of our demo. Let's get some 80s. I love 80s music.
Here's the thing: there's this argument back and forth in terms of should you, because look, we get it. A lot of kids these days, they're not necessarily listening to sports on the old school radio way via terrestrial. And so we understand that. Like, people consume differently. We do get a lot of people listening via podcasting. So should we try to up the or should we bring in newer music to try to maybe think, okay, maybe the kids might like a little refresher, or should we lean in to the millennials and the Gen Xers out there with the 80s music?
They're sampling our stuff anyways.
I know.
A lot of them are sampling our stuff anyways.
I know.
Like, whether it's whatever, Biggie Smalls, like they're sampling, Snoop Dogg. Like Snoop Dogg, obviously, you're seeing him all over the place now. And those younger demos like really grabbing onto him. And Snoop Dogg's old.
Yeah. There was the other day I was driving my kid around and I had a Tupac song pop up on the rotation. And my kid's like, I'm more of a Biggie guy. I was like, oh, geez.
East Coast, West Coast.
You're 14. You don't know what you're talking about. Knock it off.
Oh, that's awesome.
Hey, we had a chance to chat with Danny Ainge earlier in the show. We just heard Will Hardy talk about Cody Williams and where he's at. And we asked him about the fact that he's getting all these extra opportunities with where the team's at near the end of the season and how Cody's been able to take advantage of that.
I think it's huge. I think, Cody missed like the end of the season last year when he would have had some similar opportunities. He had mono. But, Cody has had some great games, as has a lot of our young guys. And it's been fun to watch his development and just how much more comfortable he feels. I think that Will and our coaching staff has done a wonderful, wonderful job with Cody and getting him focus on the things he does good while they're bringing him along with the things he doesn't do as well. And I think Cody has been really fun to watch.
There's a lot of conversations about how players can develop during an off season and the time they spend in the gym. Can players also develop skill sets in the course of a regular season?
Absolutely. Just because opportunity, and every player is different. Like, you can't put all players in similar categories. Mm-hmm. But I feel like Cody is a very conscientious kid and player. And, he hasn't felt super comfortable, playing with all of our star players yet. but he's getting there, and he was getting there before he's had his recent run too, where he does get a little bit more of a green light. I remember when I was playing in Boston, Scotty, like we used to go to shoot around when Bird wasn't going to play or McHale wasn't going to play. We'd have shoot around. We would divvy up his shots. We'd have shooting contests to just say, okay, I get 5 of McHale's shots, or I get 4 of Bird's shots tonight. And those were fun nights. We don't want that to happen in the playoffs, but sometimes, getting those opportunities and being able to spread your wings a little bit are fun for the players.
How do you think he's improved defensively over the last couple of years?
I think he's been really good defensively most of this year. And, I've heard my coaches say he's the best defensive player on our team more than a few times. So I think Cody he's still going to get a lot better too. I don't think he's anywhere near where he's going to be.
Danny Ainge kind enough to join us talking Utah Jazz basketball. Ace Bailey getting a lot of opportunities out there as well. When you look back at his rookie year, how do you feel like he's acclimated to the professional game?
Yeah, I think similar in different ways. His strengths are more as a primary scorer, and I think that he's got those opportunities more as Lowry's not on the court and Keontae's not on the court, but he's shown signs of that most of his life. And but he does get more freedom, and it's not as not as conscientious as it. Again, like I've experienced this before. Like when I play with Bird and McHale, I'm not the same player because you got to do different roles and you got to play your role on a team. So both of these guys and all of these young players, like they have to find their place. They have to be able to play with everybody and with anybody, and that usually starts with defense, rebounding, and playing the right way. And I'm confident these guys will.
Watching Kennedy Chandler play 40 minutes the other night, what kind of a mindset do you have to have as a player when you sign that 10-day contract? Because, you're going to have limited opportunities to make that impression, but you want to be a team guy, but you also want to get some stats up. How can a guy be successful and make sure he's got that right mindset coming into a situation like that?
Well, it's kind of fun watching the guys that have come in on 10-day contracts. Starting with Mo Bamba and, going down the line for the guys. I think we've had 4 10-day contracts this year. It's fun watching because they are hungry. They are playing different, playing better even than they played in the G League. They are, this is a really, really unique opportunity for them to showcase their talents, not just for the Utah Jazz, but for the whole league. And so it's a really important time for those guys. It's been fun to watch their enthusiasm and their energy.
So overall, when you've got guys that are coming back from injury and you're trying to get them through it, is it hard to, when a guy's out with an injury, to try to keep him engaged with the team? Or do you just want him focused on, hey, you get better, you stay on track, and then we'll work you back in when that time is right? Because, you don't want to leave a player behind as you go throughout the course of a season, but you also need to have them focused on the right things.
Yeah, no, getting our guys healthy. It started with Walker, at the beginning of the season and, keeping him acclimated, keeping him with the team and being around the guys. And same thing as you go down with Nurk and Lowry and Keontae, all of them, like they're very much engaged with day-to-day team activities and part of the team and working on what they can work on in their rehab and in their development as strength and shooting, et cetera.
I know the time is going to come, and I know you keep those relatively quiet when you do bring in players for workouts for the upcoming NBA draft. I assume those will probably begin here pretty soon. Do you like casting a wide net and bringing in as many people as you possibly can? Yeah,
I do. I think that every year is unique and every year is different in that regard and how wide of a net you put out there. But, our focus will be on the top part of the draft. And, but there's a lot more names that are in our minds right now than are just on, every mock draft's mind.
When you're looking at guys that you potentially might be signing that are in the G League or the 10-day, Is it advantageous sometimes when you've already had them in for a workout, maybe a year, 2 years ago, to go back and reference the notes and the video on that?
Yeah, but I think most of the time we're looking for a player to just see that we haven't seen as much, and we're just looking for different types of players. Like we brought in a couple guys initially with Mo. Like we like Mo, we like what he's done for us this year in the G League, et cetera. But we were bringing in some defensive-minded guys just because we want our defense to get better, and so the defensive-minded guys, they actually have helped our defense be even better and helped some of the guys that weren't as focused on defense as they needed to be by seeing a little bit like Chris Dunn did for us a couple of years ago. So, yeah, we're just looking for guys that really want it, play hard. They can inspire everybody.
Give me your thoughts on Will Hardy and how he's been. I mean, obviously, he's done a tremendous job. The situation hasn't been ideal in terms of winning games at a super high level that he'd like. But, when you evaluate coaches around the NBA and you talk to people outside of Salt Lake City that know Will Hardy and know his capabilities, people have just talked about what a masterful job he's given the situation he's in.
Yeah, we're huge fans of Will's. What he's dealt with is tough. It's hard. It's not what every coach dreams of. And we're really excited for next year. And we think we have a great coach ready to lead our team. And he has a lot of respect for everybody in our organization. That's for sure.
So how much I know you're at conference tournaments and NCAA tournament games, and you're watching a lot of games, just scouting players. But just as a guy that loves the game of basketball, were you, and a guy that was a former coach, were you cringing at the end of that Duke game, like all of us were?
Yeah, I don't really. That was a tough one for Duke to lose. It was I'm not rooting for Duke necessarily or UConn, but I just that, what an amazing comeback victory. And it's a great
feeling to have if you're UConn, but that's a tough one for Duke. And so you go, oh man, that's too bad. Cause I know the coach and a couple of the players and one of the fathers that's sitting in the stands. Pretty good. So that was a tough one for them.
As a player and as a coach, do the losses sting more than the wins feel good?
Yeah. I wish that wasn't that way. I mean, there's been some amazing victories that you don't ever forget, but yeah, I think that they do. I think that losses are a little more painful than the joy you get from winning because you just expect to win, and and that's a big moment. And so anything less is kind of a memory that you don't want to remember, but for whatever reason, they seem to last a little bit longer.
When obviously there's always going to be the elite one and dones, and we know who they are that will go to college for a year and then make that transition into the NBA and be just fine. They'll be great players. But have you seen better development from players, or maybe you don't have the sample size yet, you need to wait a couple more years, with guys maybe realizing, okay, I can make more money by going back to college than I can being a second-round pick or an undrafted free agent and really testing my waters in the NBA levels. I can go back and make more money. And are you seeing maybe more skilled players coming into the league because of that as opposed to maybe 3 or 4 years ago?
That's a good question, Scotty. I haven't really studied that much. I mean, yeah, there's more money to stay, and I think it feels like second-round picks usually are the people we're talking about. But I think that players that are in the first round are usually coming out, and especially players in the middle to top of the first round are coming out. But sometimes that's the only opportunity. Like, players don't just necessarily get a lot better in college, and because the game is so different. And, when you're older, you have a big advantage. Just, how much the game has changed. It used to be when you come into college, like maybe there's one or two players that, left your graduating high school class and entered the NBA early over a 4-year period. And then it went to 4, maybe, that started as freshmen. And then maybe it went to 8 or 10. And now there's just a lot more. And so I think as you're becoming a senior, and in a lot of cases in the world today, you're 5th-year seniors and you're almost 24 years old, it's a big advantage. Some of the freshmen right now are playing against guys that are 5 years older.
Yeah.
And that is a huge, huge advantage, just physically, emotionally. And so, it's not, I think that the physical strength of that age difference and experience helps a little bit. But I think that the young players that come into the NBA, a lot of them do get a lot better and early, as we see. We've just been talking about Cody, who should be a junior right now, and Ace should be a freshman right now. Basically, he's about the same age as most of the freshmen in this. He's younger than a few of the freshmen in the lottery this year. And so, those guys just have a lot of good steps ahead of them.
I was talking to a coach up at Utah State about this a few weeks ago, and they had mentioned that how difficult it is for guys. And we were talking about Sam Merrill and Neemias Queta, and how they had opportunities in the league and then had to go back down to the G League. And I'm sure, especially with Nemi, there were a lot of opportunities to go to Europe and make good money. But the thought of, I'm going to stick it out and just keep this dream alive as long as I possibly can before, throwing in the white flag and going overseas and playing there. Is that come down to your agent a lot for these players to say, okay, you know what, this is probably the best bet, or hang in there, I still think you've got a shot in the league? Because obviously their patience is paid off in folds for those guys.
Yeah, so I think it probably has most to do with the players themselves and the risk they're willing to take, because agents will give them options. Here's an option. What do you want? You can make double the money if you go overseas, or you can stay here and make this. And the likelihood of getting to the NBA is not very good, but you still have a chance and hope. And anyway, those guys, it's worked out really well for us. It's been wonderful to see their development. Well, you've been up at Utah State there, so you've been able to watch these guys in their careers, and it's always fun to see that.
Yeah.
Guys that want to come back to school. I'm always for the guys that want to go back to school, because there is a big learning process and a learning curve. At the same time, going to the G League like Sam and Queta did, and there's value in it. Like I was mentioning, Chris Dunn. Chris was in the G League for 3 years after being the number 5 pick, and when we called him up here and signed him to that contract, he said, "DA, I'm never going back." I'm never going back. And he played like that, and he has continued to play like that in LA. And, you appreciate that the hard times that you've gone through and those opportunities that they see. And so there's great value in the G League for many players.
There he is, part of our conversation with Danny Ainge. If you want to hear the rest of it, just go to KSLSports.com on our podcasting page, or just whatever podcasting platform you use. Just search Scotty G. All right, final segment coming up next. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Protein is now at Starbucks, and it's never tasted so good. You can add protein cold foam to your favorite drink, or try one of our new protein lattes or matcha. Try it today at Starbucks.
Hey, sweetie, your mother showed me this Carvana thing for selling the car. I'm going to give it a try. Wish me luck. Me again. I put in the license plate. It gave me an offer. Unbelievable. Okay, I accepted the offer. They're picking it up Tuesday from the driveway. I haven't even left my chair. It's done. The car is gone. I'm holding a check. Anyway, Carvana, give it a whirl. Love ya.
So good, you'll want to leave a voicemail about it. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone, wrapping up another edition of the show. Fun one today. Big thanks to Sly Sylvester for joining us. Big thanks for Shehan Jeyarajah joining us as well. And, of course, Danny Ainge, no big deal. It's been a busy, busy show. Back at it tomorrow. Remember, JJ and Alex coming up next as we continue to talk a little Utah Jazz, Utah Mammoth. We get you covered. Those guys have got you covered from top to bottom. Lloyd, good show today, man. I don't know if we top 5 show.
Yeah, I'd say we were up there. Danny Ainge really helps. That's
what I'm saying. There's nothing.
You got that. You got Sly. You got Shehan who brought it. That was as far as Scotty G and Friends goes, which is it's in its infancy.
Yeah,
I would say that is a top 5 show right there.
Top 5 show. We'll
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Coming up next, JJ and Alex. Thanks for hey. By the way, everybody, stay off social media. Just stay off. And
it's bad.
If nothing else, disable your retweet button. Just don't retweet anything today.
Don't believe it.
Don't believe it.
If your team comes out with a big statement, by the way, you don't even need to read it because trust me, it's bogus.
Yep.
It's not real. Not going to happen. You know what? Right when I knew what it was today was, I said, you know what? I will not read. I'm not reading anything at all on any social media. Just not going to believe it.
That's my public service announcement for the day. Just don't, if you are on social media, which I think you should not be, don't hit retweet on anything. All right. That wraps it up for us. JJ Alex next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Protein is now at Starbucks, and it's never tasted so good. You can add protein cold foam to your favorite drink or try one of our new protein lattes or matcha. Try it today at Starbucks.
Mom, can you tell me a story?
Sure. Once upon a time, a mom needed a new car.
Was she brave?
She was tired, mostly. But she went to Carvana.com and found a great car at a great price. No secret treasure map required.
Did she have to fight a dragon?
Nope. She bought it 100% online. From her bed, actually.
Was it scary?
Honey, it was as unscary as car buying could be.
Did the car have a sunroof?
It did, actually.
Okay, good story.
Car buying you'll want to tell stories about. Buy your car today on
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.